Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the All In Podcast. I'm your host, David Moore, CEO of Keller Williams Arizona Realty, with my co-host, the fabulous Joe Quattrucci, Director of Growth for the Chris and Cole Real Estate Network. And dude, today, I'm not even gonna lie. I actually just got a little shiver. I mean, I don't want this guy's head to get too big, but we have a guest with us who a few years ago in our business development made a big impact. And his name is Clint Pulver. Clint is on the show with us today. Clint, how's it going, man?
Life is so good. You too. I'm honored to be a part of the show. Thanks for having me on.
We're super excited to have you here, Clint. And for the listeners, just a real quick note, David and I had the opportunity to be in Austin and see Clint and meet him in person on stage, and had an incredible performance and presentation really that really inspired and impacted us in a lot of great ways. And so that's why we decided to have you on the show here today, Clint. Tell our listeners kind of a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so for the last 5 years, I have traveled the world as the Undercover Millennial. It's kind of like Undercover Boss without the makeup. I would go into an organization as a millennial. I am a millennial, and I would just dress like I'm kind of dressed now, backwards hat, normal clothes, and I would walk into a business as someone who was looking for a job. And I'd walk up to the first person that I saw, and I would just say, "Hey, I'm looking for work, thinking about applying. What's it like to work here?" And then always the employee kind of takes a minute, looks around, feel like we're doing an illegal drug exchange, and then they tell me everything, what's good, what's bad, what they hate, what they don't like, if they would recommend the job, or if they would say run away from here, if they love the manager, if they hate the manager. And the beauty of what we've been able to do is we created an environment where employees could speak their truth. Because I wasn't a survey, I wasn't a one-on-one management meeting, I was just another millennial. And we have now, for the 5 years that we've been doing this, we have worked with 181 organizations, and I have interviewed over 10,000 employees undercover.
Wow.
And the magic of all of the research was not found when an employee was dissatisfied with their job. The magic was found when an employee would say, when I would ask the question, "What's it like to work here?" And they would respond with, "I love it here. No, I love my job. I love what we're doing. The culture, my manager, Susie, you got to meet Susie. You should apply." And when that would trend in an organization, employee after employee after employee, and the magic behind how those great leaders were creating organizations that their people never wanted to leave. And that was the beauty. And we got to see what great leadership looked and felt like from the employee's perspective. And we have a new book that's coming out April 13th all over the world. And we titled the book, "I Love It Here, How Great Leaders Create Organizations Their People Never Wanted to Leave." And it's not another leadership book written by, a self-proclaimed leadership expert. That's not what the book is. This is a book that is written by 10,000 employees who knew when their leaders were getting it right. It's their stories, it's their truth. And it's a perspective, and it was an honor to be able to hear and tell their stories. And it needs to be told.
I love the concept, man. Tell me, what inspired you to do this Undercover Millennial concept, and how did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, it's a great story. So I was in New York City in a mastermind group 5 years ago. And one of the gentlemen that we had the opportunity to meet with owned a large sporting good retail chain in Manhattan. And we're talking to him about his business. We're trying to learn, how did he grow, what worked. And he had this huge need to adapt his business to the market trend, right? He's on Amazon now. They're using social media. The old mentality of business doesn't work. And he was like this thick New Yorker. And I'll never forget, he said, "You got to adapt in your business or you're going to die."
You're really good at that.
Ingrained in my mind. And I was like, okay, this guy's intense. And then I just wondered, I said, what about your management style though? Have you had to change how you manage your employees today versus what you did 20 years ago? And he fired back and he said, no, the way I manage today is the same way I managed 20 years ago. And we get results. And another powerful statement, It was interesting though, because he thought that he needed to adapt how he did business, but he did not need to adapt how he managed people. And we're in the store and I look around and everybody's my age or younger. And I thought to myself, I said, I wonder if they would say the same thing. I wonder if the employees would have the same perception that this CEO does. So we thanked him for his time. We had 35 minutes to kill until we needed to go to the next place. He gave us like 60% off of swag. I didn't really want anything. So I just had time to kill. So I literally walked up to the first employee that I saw and I just said, hey, I'm just curious, what's it like to work here? And then the employee said, he looked at me and he said, do you really want to know? I said, well, yeah, I want to know. He goes, I can't stand it here. He said, literally, it's one of the most miserable jobs I've ever had. It's just a job. Like I am a cog in a wheel. I don't even know if my managers know I'm here right now. And then I asked, I said, well, then why do you work here then? And then he said, no, I've already applied to 3 places. As soon as I get an opportunity, I'm out. And I thought, okay, maybe the guy's having a bad day. Okay. He's just, not enjoying the job. So I went to another employee and another and another. And in that 35-minute time frame, I interviewed 6 of his employees. And at the end of those conversations, 5 out of the 6 of his people said they would not be working for this guy and his store in less than 3.5 months.
Wow.
That was the moment, dude. That was the one I was like, oh my gosh. Because the reality of what he thought versus what was really happening in the lives of his employees was completely opposite. And I said to myself, I wish he could know. I wish he knew so that he could be better for his people. And the sad thing, you guys, is that most managers have no idea that they're performing poorly. Because they sit down with an employee and they have these one-on-one meetings, right? What can we do to be better for you? And I remember in corporate America, man, I would never tell the truth. Like, I have a manager, I did not like the guy, and he would say that, and I would just go, no, man, it's cool. It's cool. I don't want to be the dramatic one. There's no incentive for me to tell him how I really feel. But what the employees are thinking in their head is you devalue me. Like, you micromanage everything that we do. Every time our team wins, you take all the credit. Every time our team sucks or loses at something, you blame everybody else. And I'm looking for another job. And then the manager wonders in 3 months while the employees just leave, why they quit. And so that was the foundation of how I created this whole organization, that we were able to get the truth, the real and authentic data behind how to create a better work environment.
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. I'm tapping my leg because I'm so passionate about this area, and I know both of us are passionate about growth in this area because we all know what it's like to work for a manager, a leader, or be part of an organization where we feel like it's a cog. And especially in real estate, really the impetus, I mean, I hear it every week from people. The impetus for people getting into real estate is to become their own boss because they want to free themselves from the terrible leadership that they've experienced in the past. And so the fact that like you embarked on this journey of like 5 years to get the real authentic version of these employees' story is so fascinating to me. So I want to talk then about some of the things that you've discovered over the past several years and how it is that great leaders, just like the subtitle of the book, like how do great leaders create organizations that their people never want to leave? Because here's the reality, and this is something that we're on a mission to change. You know, the attrition rate in real estate is incredible, just people coming into the business and getting out of the business. But the attrition rate is also huge, people moving on to real estate teams or off, or into a brokerage and then into a different brokerage. And so talk to us about some of the things that you've learned as to how great leaders come to be, how they lead, and how they create environments that people want to remain in.
Yeah, totally. So leadership is key because leadership is the number one reason why people stay. And it's also the number one reason why people leave. In every organization that I did undercover research in, there were always 4 types of managers. 4 types every time. Number 1 was the removed manager. This is the removed, agent or director that they've been in the position for way too long. They should have retired 20 years ago. They're burnt out. They're exhausted. They're low on their standards. And they also do not care about their people. Like, I don't know, sell a house, do what you got to do.
It's the one that has the 1980s glamour shot profile picture that's never been updated. And anyway, that's an inside joke.
They're just you call it old school, removed. They're just, there's no need to adapt or change. And so what does this create in their team? The same thing. Disengagement. My manager could care less. Why should I care about the job? The second type of manager is what we call the buddy manager. This is the manager that's really good at connecting with everybody. They want to be everybody's homie. They're the cool boss. But when it comes to the standards and developing their people, they're really low because they don't want to ruffle feathers. They don't want to have a crucial conversation. They don't want to have a debate. They don't want people to not like them. They want to be liked more than they want to be respected. So what does this create in the workforce? Entitlement. This is where you find, an agent almost becomes more of the head boss than the boss does, because that boss has picked favorites. That boss is trying to love people, not just develop people. The third type of manager is the controller. This is like the hard seller. This is the person that's like, put your head down, go to work. Don't complain to me. Do you know how we used to have to sell houses? There was no software. We went out blood, sweat, and tears. Don't complain to me. You want me to show you that I love you? I give you a paycheck. Okay, do your job. They're really, really, really high on standards, but they are low on connection. I'm not here to be your friend. We're here to sell houses. So what does this create? Rebellion, pushback. This is the manager that's consistently trying to go toe to toe with everybody in the office instead of going shoulder to shoulder. But the fourth manager, this was the magic. And I don't even call them, I call them the mentor manager. They are equally high on their standards and expectations. We do sell houses. We do have goals. But I also understand that you are a human being and you have a life outside of work. I understand the power of connection. I understand that you have needs. And I'm here to help you fulfill those. What does this create? Respect. They were not always liked, but they were respected. And it was a powerful thing. And here's the thing I need to make note of. Mentorship is not leadership. Leadership is not mentorship. Management is different than those two as well. Mentorship was the most powerful component through the eyes of an employee when it increased loyalty, engagement, and buy-in. Why? Because mentorship is not a title. Mentorship has to be earned. You cannot become a mentor until the mentee invites you into their heart. But if you achieve that as a leader, if you achieve that as a manager, you win. Because it is not a title, it has been earned. And it's because of who the leader is. Now, a traditional leadership is someone who stands in front and they lead, right? Like, this is the direction. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. Now, a manager is the person that makes sure that everything happens, right? There's no leaks in the ship. We can get to where we need to go. All of the processes, the flow, the infrastructure. But the mentor is the person who's taking care of the people on the ship. The mentor is the person who connects others to their dreams. And it was the most powerful thing in the lives of employees.
I want to get into mentor managers more. Obviously, that's magical. But also selfishly, I want to go back a little bit to the buddy manager specifically. All right, and And I kind of I just want your guidance, because I think as you were going through these different types of managers, I'm thinking of myself and I'm thinking, oh man, I probably tend to fall off on that side of things. So can you speak a little bit about your findings on the buddy manager and go a little deeper on that? If people are familiar with the DISC profile, I'm a super high I, okay? People pleasing. And I bet there's a lot of listeners, a lot of agents, leaders that probably are like that as well, and may be able to resonate with this buddy manager thing. What are some of the other things that you found with the buddy manager?
Yeah, the moment that you start playing favorites in an office is the moment you lose. And you that's what a buddy manager becomes. You become a homie, you become a friend. But we have to remember that when you are in a position of leadership, there's a whole other side to the organization, and it's productivity, it's a profit, it's development, it's growth. If you want to scale your business, you must make the deposits of trust. So the connection piece is there, but we do that so that we can also make withdrawals, because you have a business to grow. We are in the business of making a profit. Now, you need people to do that as well. And so the connection piece is there, but I think, again, it's the standards and it's the development side, because you've made the deposits of trust. It allows you to make the withdrawals. And if you're not making the withdrawals, then you just are simply a friend. So that's where you have to ask yourself, okay, are my people actually developing, or are they just having a good time? There's a big difference between that. Are we actually growing and scaling and making a profit? And if you are, then you might be more back within the realms of a mentor, right? Because if the business is growing. But if you're not in that way, then continue to make the deposits of trust, but you've got to up the withdrawals. You've got to up the development.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, and I like how this conversation is bringing light to the fact that you can be a manager that's doing your best and treating people with courtesy and respect, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving them the management style and the mentorship style that they need to not only grow themselves as an individual, but to also help grow the organization. So it really, this conversation is requiring us to take a closer look at our own behaviors and say, is this truly in the best interest of everybody involved? Clint, I want to dive into, I understand that you've outlined these 5 C's of mentorship, and I think this is an interesting concept. Can you talk a little bit about what are those 5 C's?
Yeah, if you look at any great story, a playwright, a film, you always have the hero of the story, and they're going through this difficult situation, and then who appears? Every time, it's the mentor. Every time, like Luke Skywalker had Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Rocky, I love Rocky. I'm a big Rocky fan.
Big time.
Rocky had Mick. The Aladdin had the genie. Simba had Mufasa. Katniss, she had Haymitch, right? These great mentors that appear in the story, and they are the catalyst. They are the person that connects the hero to their dreams. If anybody in our research earned the right to be called a mentor, they possessed these 5 qualities. And I call them the 5 C's of mentorship. Number 1 is confidence. Confidence was a mindset. I want to learn from somebody and work for somebody that's confident in their abilities. They believe in themselves, they believe in the product, and they're confident in helping me to see that as well. Confidence matters. If you're the guy that's like, I mean, you could maybe tell them this, and then they might buy the house, but then you could follow up. There's a possibility. It could work. That's not mentorship. That's not mentorship. You want someone who's confident. Number 2 is credibility. What's your resume? How many houses have you sold? How many years have you been in the industry? I want to know your background. If I'm going to work with you and you are to be my mentor, you better have some credibility. Number 3 is competence. You might know everything about real estate, how it works, what the seasons look like, what the market's trending at. But if you cannot actually get in and do that, you're irrelevant. You're not a practitioner. I want to learn from someone who's actually selling houses as well, not someone who's back just sitting in their office barking orders. Competency mattered. They were relevant and current in the times in which they were mentoring in. And number 4 is candor. They were so good at creating relationships so strong that honesty could exist. Let me repeat that. They build relationships so strong that honesty could exist. And that's where, again, like the buddy manager is not ideal for that, because the buddy managers is not going to, they're afraid to have those candid conversations. I want to work with someone who's going to give it to me straight. Someone who's going to say, listen, like, you are below where you should be. You're in your 3rd year of selling homes. You should be here. Okay. And that's a problem, because you're not where you should be. And we're going to have an honest conversation on how to get you there. Right? That's where the candor is essential. And then the last C is care. The ability to care. The moment you stop caring for individuals and the people that you mentor is the moment you do not become a mentor. You have to be willing to advocate as much as you develop. And I think about it in my own life. Anybody that I have ever done what it takes to associate with that extraordinary person, they possess those 5 C's. 100%.
That's huge. And what would you say, Clint, is the C that, if there was one C that the majority of leaders were missing, was there one that stuck out, or was it all over the board?
It's all over the board. I mean, you'll have some people that care. They care a lot, but they just don't have the credibility. And so they don't establish the value. Like, yeah, you're a really nice guy. And that's where you become the buddy. Or you know what? You might know everything, but you're an a-hole. Like, I cannot stand. Everybody point to who's the jerk in the room. Everybody points to that guy. He's credible, right? He's really confident. He's not a mentor, though. It really, honestly, is. It has to be all 5. It has to be all 5 to really become that significant individual.
Clint, I just want to say this. I'm over here listening to you, man, and I hear the passion and I hear the confidence in your voice. I'm taking notes as quickly as my hand can write, because every word that's coming out of your mouth just is making so much sense. I'm curious to know what brought you kind of into this line of work to begin with. And if I may, I feel like I might have some sort of the answer kind of in the back of my head. When David and I had the opportunity to see you on stage, you had talked about an experience that you had as a child. And I would, number one, I would love for you to tell that story, because I think it's so impactful for our listeners. And I'm just curious, is that really kind of what led you to coming into this profession and this passion that you're pursuing?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. If you look at the stats, you know, how many people are so miserable in their jobs? Like, they're just 80%, right? That's a Gallup study. Over 80% of people hate what they do for a living. They wake up every morning and they just exist. They don't live, they exist. 9 to 5, rinse and repeat. You're doing the same things day in and day out. And in my research, it was always that beautiful thing when people were not existing at work. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And it fired me up, because I have had those people in my life. I was the kid in school that always had a hard time sitting still. I would tap, my right hand would start to move. I had a hard time sitting still. I focus issues. I still have a hard time sitting still. Obviously, I'm all over the place. And everybody saw it as a problem. I got nicknamed. I got teased. People called me the twitcher, the tapper. I got sent to the principal's office because I couldn't sit still. And I had one teacher in my life, and his name was Mr. Jensen. And I'll never forget, he looked at me in his class while I was tapping, and he said, "Young man in the back," he said, "I need to see you after class. We're going to have a conversation." And everybody else is like, "Oh, Twitcher's going to die." The bell rings. Class dismissed. Everybody leaves. And it's just me and Mr. Jensen. And he took me to the back and he sat me down. He said, "Listen," he said, "I know you're the problem kid. You're the kid that you're on the list, Clint. Everybody talks about you. You tap in my class and you tap in everybody else's." But then he said, but I watched you though. I sit back and it's crazy. You'll write with your right hand and then you start tapping with your left hand. And you write perfectly, and you have this independence. And then you can switch it. You can write with your left hand, and then you'll start tapping your right hand." And he looked at me and he said, "I think you're ambidextrous." And I was like, "No, I'm Presbyterian." He said, "No, that's not what it means." He said, "Can you tap your head and rub your belly?" And I said, "Yeah, I can do it." he said, can you switch it? He said, can you rub your head and then tap your belly? And literally, without thinking about it, I could do it. And he leaned back in his chair and he looked at me and he said, I don't think you're a problem. I just think you're a drummer. Sometimes people hear that and they go, what's the difference between those two things?
And Clint, I mean, that obviously, I feel like that changed the trajectory. That one interaction with one person, a short moment in time, changed the trajectory of your life. And can you speak to that a little bit? What did you leave that conversation with? How long did it take for you to really figure out and understand what that meant and bring us through that progression?
We do not remember days. We remember moments. And in that moment, Mr. Jensen, that old teacher, he leaned back in his desk and he opened up the top drawer and he reached inside and he took out my very first pair of drumsticks. And he created a moment. And I have found time and time and time and time again, the greatest mentors were beautiful at creating moments. Significant moments in the lives of people where they liked themselves best because of them. Moments of advocacy, moments of potential, moments of worth. And he gave me those sticks and he made me promise that I would keep them in my hands. And that was 22 years ago. And for 22 years, I've had the opportunity to tour and record all over the world as a professional drummer. I played with some amazing artists, done the whole tour thing, was on America's Got Talent. I remember I graduated high school. I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. So what do? When you're at that point, you go to college, right?
Exactly.
I went to college and I graduated in 2012 with zero college debt, zero. And that was from music scholarships. And I don't say all those things to go, wow, what a list, or, oh man, that's amazing. The reason I say that is because of a mentor educator who created a moment, who helped me live a better story. And guess what happened from that moment? Man, Mr. Jensen said it could have said jump, and I would have said how high. My test scores improved. My actual twitching slowed down because I was more conscious of listening, because he got to the part about me. Every leader needs to remember this. Every employee is asking you the question, let me know when it gets to the part about me. And some people hear that and they go, well, those entitled little shining stars in my life.
We almost had to put the explicit tag.
Yes. I let me know when it gets to the part about me. And I would say it's not so much about entitlement as it is about good business. It's bringing humanity back into the workplace. And we need more of that. We need more Mr. Jensens.
Well, Clint, as you retell that story, I remember sitting in that auditorium when you told it the first time, and you just telling that story created a moment, right? And I remember vividly, though, my mind drifting to a moment that I had with one of the most significant mentors in my life, and then going through and charting my story and just validating everything that you're saying, right? Like, leaders, the best leaders, mentors, are the ones who don't create days, but they create moments. And when we think about moments, I think it makes it easier to think in terms of deposit and withdrawal and getting that in balance. The second he created that moment, he had made that deposit such that now, because you were listening, because he had grabbed your heart, he could then make a withdrawal and he could develop you. And it just makes sense because it's humanness.
Yes, it is basic human relationships. It is not rocket science at all. And it blows me away on how many leaders just can't do it. They either don't know, or they're just burnt out, or they're put, we promote so many people into management that should never be managers. And they're just in the position because it was an increase in pay, not because they recognize the stewardship that they have over their people. And it's unfortunate that I have a job teaching this, but it is also a beautiful thing when people, just like you two, when you get it, when the light bulb switches on and you're like, yes, This is it. And then every day you go to work and you try to create that for people. It's nothing better.
So let me ask you this. I'm listening to everything you're saying. I love it all. And now I'm wondering for myself, when I go back into the daily grind, how do I implement some of these practical techniques? How do I recognize my employees without being too much of a buddy, but simultaneously rewarding that good behavior and bringing the human connection back into it? What are the different ways that I actually execute that?
Yeah, so two things that every employee is looking for is an employer that will help them to survive and thrive. I need to be able to pay my bills, and I also hopefully can contribute to my passion and my purpose. I call it the 3 Ps. If in your organization they can't play to their strengths, they're not truly happy where they're at, you have a problem. Number 2, if they cannot provide sufficiently for their lives, like putting dinner on the table, paying the bills, they will go and do that somewhere else. And 3 is purpose. Having an opportunity to do something bigger than themselves. You're not just in the business of selling homes, you're in the business of writing stories. You're in the business of connecting people to their dreams, right? It's that switch, it's that flip. And so presenting that is key. Also, potential and worth are important to remember here, because if your people can't grow where they are at, they will go and grow somewhere else. And that's important to remember. Mr. Jensen, the drumsticks represented potential. He gave me a tool that represented the possibilities of what could be. But then he advocated for my worth. He looked at me and he said, hey, Clint, I see you, and who you are is enough. Recognition is another really important piece. So when I say potential, I'm meaning growth opportunities. Do you provide growth opportunities for your people? For example, does everybody have a growth development plan in your business? The growth development plan should consist of 3 things. What's the goal? What's the objective that I'm going to help you become? Number 2 is, what are you as an employee going to do to make that happen? Number 3 is, what am I going to do as your manager to help you get there? And then I would add a 4th component. There needs to be a follow-up date, a timeline attached to that. Every employee should have that. And it's crazy to me how many organizations do not have that for their people. It's more of like, just do the job, hit the numbers, sell a house. There is no growth development plan. Spark a possibility.
Well, and maybe there's someone out there listening to this, and maybe they fall more on the removed manager or the controller manager, and I can hear it now, them kind of sitting back in their seat, kind of like, this seems kind of wishy-washy. But I want to like bring it back to what you said about a mentor manager still holds high standards, because if all of our people have a growth development plan like that, you were very careful to say there's a component of what is the goal, what are you going to do to get there? Because the reality is, in order to create opportunities for our people, there has to be growth. There has to be a profit. There has to be scaling within the company such that we can offer monetary and non-monetary benefits that contribute to the person's purpose. So it's not an either or, right? It's a both and that's the magic of a mentor.
Exactly. So many managers like that have that mentality. I always like to remind them, do you understand how much it costs you when somebody leaves your organization? What it costs to rehire somebody, to retrain them, what you lose in morale when somebody just walks out of the door and tells everybody why they're leaving. And then they go and tell everybody else why they left, about why they hate you and they can't stand your organization. What that does to productivity. So it's fine. It's fine. If you want to have that mentality and you want to be a solo entrepreneur and have no employees, fine. Yeah, this is all fluff and wishy-washy and soft skills. But if you want to build a business that lasts with people, and you want to reach the mountain of success, but you also want to take people with you, you want to change some lives, you want to help people write a better story, then yeah, some of those soft skills, those human skills are essential.
And I think a lot of real estate entrepreneurs get that with their clients. Like if they listen back to that last 30 seconds, they get that with their clients. We get it. Like, oh man, if someone leaves this experience and they go and write a bad review, there's an exponential negative effect on my business for years to come. But sometimes, and this is where I get into going from a solo entrepreneur into a business leader. When you're scaling, it's not so much about your sales skills, it's about leadership skills. And that's a shift that a lot of us don't make or are making too slowly, and why this whole conversation becomes so important. You've mentioned the words advocate and develop. What's the difference there?
Yeah, advocacy is making sure that your teammates they understand that you are there to support them to what matters to them. I think sometimes as leaders, so many leaders, it's like they're standing in front of a fireplace and they're saying, give me heat, then I'll give you wood. Sounds so weird, but it's true. Like they stand in front of the employees and say, well, do your job, hit the numbers, then I'll give you a little reward. Then we'll give you a bonus. Then I'll talk to you about, okay, maybe a promotion. If we flip that, we give the employee the wood, we give the employee the fuel, we give them the things that they need to succeed. And they know that we're an advocate in that process. They have those tools to succeed. Then that allows you to then develop, because you've given them the tools to succeed. You've gotten to the part about them first. And that's what obviously sparks the flame. That's what increases engagement. But we try so oppositely to do that. Sometimes they have such an emphasis on customer service, but they're horrible at taking care of their people. And then they wonder why their customer service sucks. It's because you're standing in front of a fireplace saying, give me heat, then I'll give you wood. We've got to flip that around. So you can develop.
This conversation is making me think of how important it is to really make sure you're vetting employees on the front end and really screening them. What advice or what guidance would you give, Clint, to making sure that you're bringing the right candidates into your organization in the first place so that all of these other tools can be used to really set yourself up for success? 3
words: always be recruiting. Always be recruiting. You want to disengage a workplace, you want to disunify an organization, hire somebody out of necessity, not out of character. And too many times we do that. We're in a bind, somebody quit, I gotta hire somebody. We put out an ad, first person that is willing to do the job, yeah, great, we need somebody. And then all of a sudden you wind up with a bunch of people that have poor attitudes, hard behaviors, not integral character, and then we wonder why our organization is dysfunctional. So always be recruiting. We found that great leaders that created good teams that thrived, good teams that had each other's backs, they were always looking for great people, even if there wasn't a position. They had that up on their website. You know, we might not have an opening, but still send us your resume. They were always recruiting, always looking for great people. Attitude, behavior, and character is what you should hire for, not a vacancy.
And that's exactly like just basic sales skills too, right? Like you are able to do better business when you have a full pipeline of clients. And so again, it makes sense, right? Just practically to have a full pipeline, if you will, of talent, a talent list. And I'll never forget like sitting down with actually our partner, business partner and boss, Kristen, who's created an enormous empire, and she pulled out her big notebook, and it's just hundreds of names of people who I want to be in business with someday. And it was like, whoa. We should have that. Everyone needs to have that.
I remember that moment. Yeah, I do. And she was like, I don't know when, I don't know in what capacity, I don't know why we'll get into business, but I would be open to being business with all of these people. And I was like, holy smokes, like I need to always be recruiting, always be looking for the opportunity, because you never know what it's going to evolve into.
That's right. That's right. And there's things like a referral program, right? Like put a healthy referral program together. There's so many different ways to hire great people. But again, the mindset of always be recruiting is key.
So tell me about you. You have this language of secret powers hidden in every employee. Tell us a little bit. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so that phrase really comes from potential and worth. And if you can tap into that, where people have the opportunity to grow, and they also feel recognized for who they are, it matters. One thing that we found that great leaders were doing is they were conducting what I call a status interview. Status interview, I came from the medical field, and status is something that doctors would refer to. They call it out in the operating room, and they're always referring to the status of the patient. So that means the vital signs. Every human has 4 vital signs: heart rate, respiratory rate, body temperature, blood pressure. You don't have those things, you're dead. And so in the medical field, you check the vitals of the patient, and then you treat the patient. And then what do you do after treatment? You recheck the vitals, and then you treat, and you recheck the vitals. And you continue that cycle until healthy stability is maintained long-term. And I think sometimes as leaders, we kind of, it's that age-old adage of, if you feed a man a fish, then you feed him for a day. But if you can teach a man to fish, then you feed him for a lifetime. Every time I hear that story, I say, who said the guy wanted a freaking fish? Who wanted a fish? I'm not really a fish guy. But the point is do we ask our people? If you want to tap in to the power, the influence, the engagement possibilities of your employees, ask them what they want. Check the status of your team. And we sometimes get in this role of like, I know what you want. I know what we're going to do. I know what we're doing for our Christmas party. I know what I'm going to give you for your annual bonus. And they have never taken the time to ask people. Do a status interview. And that consists of 3 questions. And every great leader that has created good organizations in some way, shape, or form asks a variation of these 3 questions. Every good employee deserves to be asked this. Number 1, what can I do to keep you here? Number 2, what is getting in the way of your success in this organization? And number 3 is, what can I do to help you get there? This is not a performance review. This is not a one-on-one management meeting. This is not time to go over quotas or whatever they need to do better in the job. This is a time for you to become an advocate. This is a time for you to check the status so that you can treat your people better.
I'm curious to know, Clint, how do these concepts play into your personal life? I know you're a family man, you have 2 beautiful daughters. I'm just wondering, what is the overlap, if there is one, with these business concepts and these human concepts and how you experience them in your personal life? Because I want our listeners to be able to take away some tangibles, not only for their business, but for all the different parts of their life.
It 100% translates to parenting. It translates to a marriage. It translates to a partnership. These are human skills. And yes, we've been talking about business, but the same thing happens in a marriage. The same thing happens with a relationship with your child. Are you the removed parent? Or are you the buddy parent? Where you're constantly, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. Stay out as late as you ever want. I just love me, hang out with me. Let's be friends. I want to be your friend. Or are you a parent? Right? There's a difference. And they're universal truths. Whenever you want to build a relationship, these things matter across the board. And, marriage is grand, right? But divorce is about $100,000. I recommend these types of things to all facets of life. If you want to create a family, a relationship, or an organization that those people never want to leave. They're universal truths.
And the mastery is in the mundane, right? Like, as you're talking about some of these things, I forget who said it, but someone said that systems allow me to be a truth teller, or the integrity resides in the system. And so even when you talk about those 3 questions, right, there has to be a system in place, because we can get going too fast such that we forget these things, or we've scaled to a place where we have so many people reporting that we forget. And I think it's important that if we're going to implement these things, that we remember that, like, a simple system like having a cadence around this, like, when does this show up in my calendar? When am I taking time to make sure that this is all blocked for every single one of my people? I think that becomes really important. And it's not a hard concept. It's a really simple concept. And it's mundane, right? It's just like the repetition of doing these things over and over. And if we apply it to a marriage, right? It's like, it's one reason why I personally think, like, eating around a dinner table so important? Because it's that meeting place on a constant, regular basis where I can make these deposits and the withdrawals to develop my kids and my relationship with my wife. And it's the same thing in the workplace. And I just appreciate that what we're talking about, Clint, it's not rocket science, right? It's not some brand new concept. It's reminding us to commit to the fundamentals that we know moves the needle in human relationship. So tell us a little bit more about the book, because I mean, we've only scratched the surface,
right?
And I know we've already taken some additional time from you. Tell us more about the book. Like, when is it coming out? Where can we get it? And why do people need to still pick up the book?
Yeah, I appreciate that, you guys. You can pick up the book on Amazon. It's available for pre-order, and then it releases April 13th. So just type in "I love it" here on Amazon, and then you can grab the book. People can connect with me on clintpulver.com. Always happy to connect with anybody. This book is, I think that for me, it was a key to helping me live, not just exist. And I learned that it's not about being the best in the world. It's about being the best for the world. And it's the difference between success and significance, right? If you want to be significant, if you want to be truly remembered but influential and a part of somebody's story, and because they met you, they lived a better story, then that's what this book is all about. How to be the best for the world.
I love that.
Well, that's definitely reason enough to pick up the book. We're going to link it up in the show notes. And with that, I want to transition us into the last segment of our show. Our listeners know it well. 3, 2, 1, action. It's the same 3 questions that we ask every guest. So, Clint, are you ready to be put in the hot seat, my friend?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, take it away, Joe.
All right, question number 1 for you. Who is the one person who has had the most substantial impact on your personal and professional development, and why?
There's a gentleman named Robert Farrell, and he's in the book. You can read about him in the book, and he is a dental surgeon and one of the greatest mentor managers I have ever seen. I owe so much to Rob Farrell. Doing research and seeing what he has done in his organization, it's transformed me as a dad. It's transformed me as a husband. He understands true advocacy and how to help people live, not just exist.
I can't wait to read about him.
Yeah.
Question number 2. What is the most impactful book in your business career?
A Million Miles in 1,000 Years by Donald Miller.
That was a quick answer.
1,000 years. Yeah. Unbelievable book. Everybody needs to read that book.
And we frequently hear about building a story brand from Donald Miller. I've actually never even heard about that book.
It came out before that. It's one of his earlier books, and it's all about how to make your life a better story. Gorgeous, beautiful book.
Very cool.
I can't wait to read that one. I just wrote that down. I love
Nice.
it. Clint, third and final question for you today. This is the All In Podcast, where we encourage and challenge our listeners to go out there and take what they've heard in this episode and take action. So what's the one thing that the listeners can go do today, as soon as they're done listening to this podcast, to go and start moving the needle forward in their life and in their business, and to continue to develop not only as a leader, but as a mentor? What's the one thing they can go do today?
I would say that good leaders know what they need to do, but the great leaders know what they need to stop. So instead of thinking, what's the next thing I need to do? Ask yourself, what's the thing I need to stop doing right now? Get out the to-don't list. Stop making the to-do list. Your employees, your kids, your spouse, they spell connection Time. Granted, they can't spell that well, but that's how they spell it.
Man, I already know our audience is itching to learn more about you, get more of your content. Clint, where can people find you?
Yeah, hit me up at clintpulver.com. I also love Instagram. Hit me up on Instagram, and just thank you for everybody who's listening, all the support, all the advocacy. I appreciate you both, and it's been a pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun. Guys, this has been another episode of the All In Podcast. In my opinion, one of the best. This is going to transform your life as you implement it. And so, as always, go out and play all in.